Hello guys, my name is Sam and welcome back to Swtor Central, and today's video is very special. It is an interview with Eric Musco, the man himself, the community manager of Star Wars The Old Republic. Now this interview lasts around an hour and a half, so make sure you have some time before you watch this. I'm asking Eric a whole bunch of different questions. Honestly, I'm covering so many different topics, it's unreal and I can't believe I managed to fit so many in. Galactic Command was going to be discussed during the interview, but me and Eric both decided that discussing Galactic Command should be something we follow up on because changes will be coming, which they are announcing in their live stream on Thursday. Just as a note, this video was recorded on Wednesday, the 14th of December. As a note of reference for you, I'm asking questions which range all the way from Strongholds to new operations, all the way to rumours about a Swtor 2 game, the Queen of the Sands, and Pazaak, and even SwoopRacing. So sit back, relax, because this is about to get pretty damn awesome. I want to start out by just talking about yourself because I think it's fair to say that not everybody really knows what a community manager would do. And if I'm being honest, I don't think I know 100% what you do. So
not sure if I do.
I think maybe if we talk about you a little bit, just sort of just get to know you, get to know the real Eric Musco. I think that's going to be a pretty good way to start things off. So if I ask you, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I'm just going to read this exactly because I'm not going to mess this up. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Say,
sure.
Just your name, your job. That
yeah, so my name is Eric Musco. I'm community manager for Star Wars The Old Republic, located in Austin, Texas at the BioWare studio. I've been community manager for, I don't know how long, 3 years, 4 years, something like that. But I've worked here 5 years total. I actually started 3 months before launch. So I've been here since the very beginning, and I actually got into this by I ran one of, if not the very first fan site. Ironically enough, I started a podcast with a friend of mine back in the day, and so I was a fan site just like you. I did podcasting, not YouTube, back then, and did that for a while, and then got to know some people here, got lucky, and got hired, and the rest is history, as they say.
That's pretty awesome. That is actually pretty awesome. Like, how possible is that to happen to me? Huh?
Right. Huh? The funny thing is, like, one of the biggest questions that we get asked fairly frequently is, how do I get into the game industry, just in general, especially if you want to get into community, like the community side of the game industry, community management, and the like. People like yourself, like fan sites, YouTubers, podcasts, streamers, like that is such a humongous part of the gaming industry in general now that, like, you think about it, you actually have a lot of the experience that would be required to be a community manager. You've built your own community. You have to handle things like moderation and how you communicate with people, building content strategies. Like, you actually do a lot of those things on a different scale, obviously. Being a fan site is a fantastic way to have the skill set to get into being in community at least. The other stuff, not so much, but community for sure.
So there's probably some qualifications that are needed, but doing this kind of thing does play a big part.
It's amazing. And honestly, networking is such a big part of getting into the game industry as well. Like just knowing people, getting to know, different people that you have interviewed or will interview at BioWare, getting to know those people. It all is surprisingly helpful in the long run to get into the game industry.
Wow. I'd be very honored to be somebody from the Bad Feeling podcast then, because they're actually pretty close by to you guys, aren't they?
They sure are. Are.
That's awesome for them.
Yeah.
Just come knocking on the door every day. Hey, can I have a job?
There you go.
Not, right? Okay, so you are the community manager. You are Eric Musco, which probably everybody knew anyways, but why not? Might as well make you repeat it one more time.
I'll take it.
So as a community manager, what is it that you would find yourself doing, like, on a day-to-day basis? Like, probably the thing that you do most often.
Oh man, the thing is, like, this is always one of the tricky parts to answer because really every day is kind of a different thing. I have some stuff that's pretty standard. That's just a part of what my job is day to day. Checking in on forum moderation, making forum posts, as they're needed, preparing for the live streams that may come that week. You and I have talked quite a bit on Skype this week, especially with setting up this interview, and you've been able to tell how many meetings I'm in because I'm very often not at my desk. Really what it comes down to is anything that involves dealing with the players directly. So that could be forum communications, blogs, live streams, any dealing with streamers, YouTubers, any of that stuff. I either do it or I have a hand in doing it. And then the same thing is true on the opposite side with the dev team. So I'm in quite a few meetings where they'll be talking about changes that are going to be made, and they want to get kind of a gut check on how our players are going to feel about this. Is there something that we could do better or differently that may be better in how that kind of change would be received, or is there a different change we should make that we hadn't thought about? So that's where I end up being in a lot of meetings as well. So I handle the interactions with the players to both sides.
So it sounds like you've got a lot of variables that you need to work with. It sounds very complicated.
Yeah, and that's where I say every day is so very, very different, which is part of what makes the job fun. But it's outside of the basic sentence of I do all the player stuff. It's kind of tricky. Every day is a little bit different.
Right. So you have quite a unique job, really. It sounds actually something really fascinating. It's not something you hear every day, really.
Yeah, and I think part of it too is it really depends on the individual teams. You look back. Go backwards 4 years when our team was a bit bigger and everyone was kind of a bit more specialized. For example, when I first got hired here, my sole job was social media. So all I did was I developed our content plan for, what we were going to do on Twitter and Facebook, different campaigns and contests, and anything involving social media was my job. And so I was very specialized in that way. Whereas now, as community manager, I oversee all of those things. And so that's kind of where my job got more pulled back as I got into being community manager.
Right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So just with you mentioning streamers and stuff just there, I wasn't even planning on asking this, but just while we're on that subject, I think a lot of the Star Wars The Old Republic streamers, and now I'm not that I want to bring them down at all. I mean, they're not that big of streamers, if that kind of makes sense. I visit the Twitch page quite a lot, and more often than not, they're having anywhere between 10 and 30 viewers. Now, do you reckon there is something that could be done on your guys' end that could maybe improve those numbers, or do you reckon it's something that can't really be rectified from your guys' end, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So I think the answer is yes to both of them. That's kind of where the part of the influencer program came in, right? Everyone starts somewhere. So if someone decides tomorrow, I want to be a Twitch streamer, they're probably going to have one viewer, which is themselves, and maybe a few close friends. And then over time that will build. That's just how community building works. And so for us being able to do things provide social support of being sending out a tweet of hey, check out this new streamer that's doing XYZ, or even behind the scenes stuff of getting in touch with them and being hey, here's some codes for some cartel coins to give away, because when someone sees the headline of free cartel coins, they're going to go watch it. And so we can really help with getting people in the door in that if someone's a new streamer, a new YouTuber, we can get them to that channel. We can certainly help with that. The trick is then keeping them there. That we kind of can't help with.
Of course.
Either someone likes the content or they don't. They like the personality or they don't. We can't really help there. But a large part of why we built the influencer program was to help with that kind of stuff, to kind of give visibility to more of those people. And to be fair, doing stuff like giving out codes and that kind of stuff, we've been doing that for years. We've always tried to give support to fan sites over time as best we could. This just kind of formalizes it more so we can do things more social oriented.
I think that's really awesome, by the way, as well. And I guess right now I get the chance to give you guys a personal thank you, because I've definitely had my fair share of codes from you guys, and I have very much appreciated it. So thank you from me, definitely. And I guess on behalf of everybody else who has received them.
No, it's I having been there, I know how much work it is to do what you guys do, to generate content on a daily, even weekly basis is a tremendous amount of work. Yeah. It's not lost on us, and so anything we can do to help, we always will try.
Yeah. Now I've actually had a few people ask me this question especially since I actually announced this on my YouTube channel, and I'm now just realizing that we came from talking about you to this, so we'll move back to that in a second.
That's fair.
Again, I don't do this often, so this structure is probably going to be terrible. So a lot of people have actually been asking me, how do I get into the influence program?
Sure.
So now I know you guys have said, how to get into it, or maybe not how to get into it directly, but, contact you as being the thing to do, to contact you on the forums. So could you just maybe confirm that, or maybe is there a different way
Yeah.
to get in touch
No,
with
yeah.
you?
The best thing to do is to get in touch with me. So forums, Twitter, Reddit, literally anywhere you can find my name, just get in touch with me and we can talk about what the process is thereafter. The process is honestly quite simple. It's we just want to ensure that the people who are in the influencer program are making content and making it consistently and regularly. If someone is just starting, if someone is just, they've made only a few videos, like, we're happy to support you, but we're probably not going to put you in the program, right? Like we definitely want to reward people who've been doing it for a while, that are really dedicated to making that kind of content. And so we want to help the people who are newer get there, but we may not put them in the program. We also have a bunch of other rules too. Like, for one, if you've ever had a toss violation, if you've cheated or exploited at some point, that's really not the standard we want of someone who we're going to push as representing, part of our fansite community. So we wouldn't let you in that case, just as an example. But those are the kind of things that we go through when someone sends in an application.
Okay, so you actually just reminded me of something else there, really. So can you confirm for me, right? Because I made 3 videos on command crits. Now, in these 3 videos, I got some pretty sweet-ass drops, okay? I got, I think, 5 set bonus pieces this far within my first 15 ranks, and one of them was a dupe, the legs, trousers, whatever you want to call them. And I've had people accusing me of having my... You're going to love this. I've had people accusing me of having my drop rate changed by you guys, so... Can I have some defense here, please?
I can definitely confirm 1,000,000,000%. There's no world we would ever, ever, ever do that. We actually can't. Like, I can't change what you get in there. And just as an example for people who would say that, look at what I got. I opened 4 crates on stream, and I think 3 of them were green items. What comes in them is random. There's nothing we can do to impact that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for that. Anyways,
that would also be highly illegal, just in case anyone didn't know that.
See, I was thinking like roughly the same thing. I was like, how would I even respond to that?
That's not good.
Okay, so moving back to you instead of other things there, because we're trying to get to know you here. Yeah. The real Eric Musco.
Right.
Okay, so you guys do play the game. As far as I know, of course you play the game. Oh, sorry, destroying my microphone now. You guys do play the game, of course. Do you have a favorite class? Now, I'm actually going to assume that this is a Juggernaut, but I won't step too far. And do you have a favorite storyline?
I'm so glad that you separated those into 2 questions. So my favorite storyline is Agent, without question. Nothing will ever top the Agent storyline for me. Love that storyline. Favorite class is really tricky. I think gameplay-wise, it's always going to be the Merc. Just Arsenal Merc. I always loved high mobility range DPS classes, and Arsenal Merc is just that. It's just so good.
So you're the reason why they got that awesome defensive ability.
I can't tell you how excited I was when I found out they got it. I was elated.
Hashtag Illuminati.
It's pretty good. Pretty good.
So, whichever character you have as your main, what outfit do you wear? What is your go-to set of clothing?
So Theron Sean's jacket is what I wear on my Imperial Agent, and my Imperial Agent is probably my main because it was the original. It's the first character I ever played. I've played it since day 1 of launch, and it's where all my the main thing I do when I play more than anything else is GTN sales. I swear to God, I spend 70% of my time just playing the GTN, and it's on my agent. And so it's Theron Shan's jacket, and then I mix in a bunch of other stuff depending on how I want to look and at any given time. But that jacket is probably my favorite piece of armor that's in the game.
That's pretty cool. I actually did use the Theron Shan jacket for the Swtor Olympics, if you remember that. I dyed it red and blue.
I do.
It looks awesome. Really works well.
Mine's black and purple. Looks really sweet.
Ooh, it's pretty nice, actually.
Yeah.
So is the Musco character rich? You said you spent time on the GTN. You got credits?
I spend a lot of time on the GTN. So I have a lot of credits, but the other thing I do, so I'm an avid mount collector. If someone doesn't know that, I think I'm only missing 7 mounts of the ones you can get in collections, at least. I don't have Wings of the Architect, although I wish. So what I do is every day I check the GTN for any mount I don't own and see if it drops below 20 million, I buy it. Because everything I don't own is just obnoxiously expensive at this point. But I'll get there eventually.
Confirmed Musco has more than 20 million.
I do. Yes, I do. I have more than 20, but less than 100, usually at any given time.
We sound pretty similar on that front. Okay, so I was going to ask you which achievement you're most proud of earning, but given that you like mount collecting, I think instead I'll ask you which is the mount that you're most proud of having.
Oh my goodness.
Only one. Only
I
one.
have I have all the rare Corellias that are gone. Probably those, right? That would have to be the case, just because I've been a mount collector since day one. So luckily, I was able to get them before they left. So probably all the Corellias that are gone.
Very good. It's a good answer. It's a good answer.
Yeah.
I was
will
hoping
tell you
you
though,
wasn't going to say one from the cartel mech. I was like,
my
come on.
most regretful mount is I don't have the broken down speeder from the Chevin event, which I'm genuinely saddened by that I don't have.
The Chevin event. I believe I'd missed that.
Yeah,
Didn't that
it
happen
looks
like only
like
once?
it looks like yeah, it only happened once. It looks like just the basic speeder, but the back end of it sags down and it shoots fire and smoke out of it, like it looks like a piece of junk. It's
Oh, right. Of course.
so good, so good. Anyway,
So
I don't have it. It makes me sad.
it's
That
gonna
and
make you
Wings of
sad.
the Architect.
Should use your cheats to get it. I have the Wings of the Architect though, so I'm winning.
You are
I'm
in
winning.
this conversation. You are now winning. Yes.
Okay, so as a community manager, I'm assuming that you don't get to make like groundbreaking suggestions for the game. Like you don't get to go into a room with something and be like, "Hey, put this into the game now."
No.
So if you could, like, if you had that power right now, you could walk into the room, you could walk up to Ben, and you could just pick him up and say, "Hey, Ben, put this into the game right now." What would it be, and why? Very important.
I mean, I don't even think I'm going to have to explain the why, and genuinely am not joking when I say this. I want a Kaizyken
I
companion.
knew it.
I
I
have
knew
to-
it. I knew it was
can't-
coming.
And because in my like, especially if I got to put it in the game the way I would envision it, he would just be useless. Like you'd summon him and he wouldn't even do anything. He would just sit there and we would record audio barks of him being like, you know what, you look like you got it, and he just wouldn't do anything. I would love it so much.
Oh my God, that's
He wouldn't
excellent.
actually be effective at all, but I would think it's entertaining, and that's what counts to me.
We should start a petition for you, and we'll get one going.
Appreciate that. I appreciate that. Don't worry, the team is well aware of my interest in Kaizyken.
Good, very good. Right now, I guess the next question was going to be, and are you a clicker? But I think I actually got this one answered during a stream. I think Charles actually picked this one up. So I'm going to skip that one for you this time.
I'm not correct.
only.
I am actually the opposite. I am an obsessed. Like if I have to click a button, it upsets me that I actually clicked a button. So no. The only thing I always click is my class buff. Just ritually, I've always clicked it. Otherwise, everything has to be bound.
Yep. I mean, like same as like stims and things like that. You know, you
Sure.
don't really need keybinds for this.
Sure.
Okay, so let's actually move on to some questions, like about the game. Okay, so I have divided this into different segments for anybody watching. With the last segment just being like a miscellaneous kind of thing, just a bunch of random stuff all sort of just rolled into one. And actually, how are we doing for time at the moment, just so I can kind of structure this? Right, I think we'll be okay. Okay, so we're going to start off with the solo gameplay, just because, why not?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let's do this. With the launch of 5.0 Knights of the Eternal Throne, we saw new gameplay added in the form of replayable chapters, of course, and we get a different difficulties, that kind of thing. It is a welcome feature for the story fanatics, of course. People do love the story, especially being able to replay it, go back and see all the different choices, which is very good. Especially someone like Xlitalis I've seen on YouTube, he's definitely used that feature very well.
Right.
What was your focus when you added this feature, other than the story elements? Like, what was the actual goal, other than actually just being able to go back and replay the story, or was there even another goal?
Yeah. So there's a few different things. One, the ability to go back and replay the story obviously is a big part of it. Two, we've always had a fair amount of requests, quite a bit actually from the role-playing community, but just in general, of being able to go back into these environments and be able to revisit the areas that some of these places are in, since they don't exist in any other scenarios beyond that. And certainly one of the big things that came with difficulty modes is that you may recall that Knights of the Fallen Empire, that people were not too pleased with, especially core players, felt that it was just too easy.
Yeah.
That they some people expressed that they felt that the story was less rewarding because there wasn't a challenge associated with it. And so by introducing difficulty modes, it allowed us to say, great, if you want the challenge, go play veteran. It's actually going to be a little bit of a challenge for you. And this way it won't just be where you feel like you can press one button and kind of get through that. But if there's people who just care about the story, or they feel like they're not as good at the game or something, they can still just play. They can play story just to experience what's there. But that was a lot of it. Also giving more content that a player could play by themselves. So if they wanted to be able to start challenging themselves, kind of like what was accomplished by Eternal Championship, right? Where I play by myself, but story is easy, or, however someone might feel, but they were looking for a challenge, some way to push themselves without having to get other people. Then they could start trying to, earn the achievements and the medals for getting through veteran chapters.
Of course. All right. It's a pretty good answer, actually. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting like more of a focus on the story side there, but wow.
No, I mean, story was important, certainly, but I think if Ben has certainly said this quite a bit, and I think this is very true of kind of what we've looked at in development is, Knights of the Fallen Empire was really about story, and Knights of the Eternal Throne was also about story, but it was about more than just story, right? There was also a lot of gameplay that we really wanted to focus on and improve on as part of Knights of the Eternal Throne and going forward.
Yeah.
And so story is always is very often a consideration. We are still BioWare, but gameplay was also a big impact in a lot of things as well.
Yep. The story for Knights of the Eternal Throne was truly amazing, by the way. Like, you guys did such an incredible job on that. Like, when I was like 12, 13, I actually first started playing Knights of the Old Republic back when I was like 12 or 13. I was really young. And I could not stop playing those games. And Knights of the Eternal Throne, that really took me back. It really did. And it was just so amazing. Especially Valkorion has to be like my favorite character in the game. And just seeing what happened, like, obviously without being too spoilery, was just... It was amazing. It really was. It was like that moment in Knights of the Old Republic where you were revealed as a Revan. It was like that. I was like, whoa, this is good. This is very good.
I'm glad to hear it.
I honestly, I really loved it. Okay, so moving on. The Eternal Championship. Now, again, this does bring people back to the KOTOR days, the Mysterious Stranger and all. Very cool. Is the Eternal Championship going to see an update in the future, or possibly even get like a veteran and master phase, maybe?
I mean, the Eternal Championship is certainly something that we talk about a lot, especially when we're talking about things like, solo player content with things that are difficult and stuff. I don't have any specific answers or anything to announce today, but content including and like Eternal Championship is certainly something that we talk about, trying to work towards at some point.
So it's not forgotten then, essentially. It is still being brought up.
No, for sure.
Right. Okay. So, other than what we already know, are there any plans in the works for more solo gameplay that differs from what we've had in the past? And my example was, the Eternal Championship, because when you brought the Eternal Championship, that was the very first time we'd ever seen anything like that in Star Wars: The Old Republic. So, would there... I assume there will be anyways, but is there going to be anything more like that in the future? Like, something completely new?
I mean, again, I think this is one of those, anytime there's a future question, it's unlikely that I'll have something specific, but I can say that, like, especially knowing where we implemented things like, story and veteran chapters, and then master mode chapters will be coming as well, where people will be able to, bash their face against those to see if they can succeed at those. As we continue to look at, like, introducing new content that players can play by themselves, or theoretically you can bring friends with you into that content, just like Eternal Championship, if you want to or need to. We'll continue to keep an eye on that content to see if that's something that players enjoy, players want to see more of, similar to Eternal Championship, and always kind of weigh that against, well, what if we did group content or solo content? It isn't necessarily that simple, but it's definitely stuff that we'll keep an eye on to see if there's interest for it to be released in the future.
Yeah, very good. See, honestly, I really liked the Eternal Championship, obviously, when it came out. But I really feel like the buzz kind of just... It died a little bit after doing it a few times and sort of just gaining some of the achievements. Right. I think just after a little while, without it really changing, I guess, or maybe just going for the achievements, it really did just kind of... if that makes sense. Although it is an awesome thing. But, yeah, I guess the same thing could be said for other things that are in the game. And people do get bored of things eventually, but... I don't know, I really feel like an update to the Eternal Championship and a veteran and a master phase would be incredible. I think that would be awesome. Also, give me my Rancor. I've been there so many times and I've still not got my Rancor. What's
I don't
going
have
on?
it either. If it makes you feel better, I don't have it either.
There we go. The Mount Collector doesn't have it either, so
I don't.
that makes me feel a little bit better at least.
I tried to. It just luck wouldn't have it.
Yep. Okay. So the next segment is going to be multiplayer content. We got through that pretty quick, actually. Okay. Right. So operations. We all know that more group content in general are being asked for, and you guys did deliver on that front with Knights of the Eternal Throne. You brought us Uprisings, which are cool, by the way, and it definitely suits my playstyle. So thank you for that. Where are we? We know that you guys have said that group content will become the focus in 2017. Will this group content be tied to the Cortex storyline, or will it be something new?
That's so typically we don't necessarily tie it directly to story because we don't want to have to necessarily make someone play some, supplementary group content or something to understand pieces of the story. That doesn't mean you wouldn't necessarily go to areas that you've been before or something like that. But all of that kind of remains to be seen.
Right. I think you did that with the Uprisings anyways, right? Because they are linked to the story, but not in a sense where you would have to know what's going on to understand the Uprising.
They're in support of the story. They are not necessarily part of the story, I guess would be the way we would say it.
Yeah. Okay. I like this next one. Galactic Starfighter. Okay. Now, I know that this has been brought up like so many times, and especially in past interviews as well. And most people do mock GSF. I know that they do. That one guy playing GSF or whatever, right? Now, when GSF first came out, me and my friends were all like, wow, this is going to be amazing. First thing we did was we jumped in the queue and then we went and did it, and we were all in just awe by the visuals. Like, this is amazing. This looks good. This sounds good. But I think after a few matches, it was just kind of like, but is the gameplay met there? Like, for me, I don't think it was, but for others, if that's their thing, then obviously go for it, fill your heart out, whatever. But after playing it recently, I actually think that it's growing on me, and I think it's because I'd not actually been in like the team death matches that you can do there, and I think those I actually enjoy. So I have been queuing for GSF a bit more, and I want to say that the Galactic Command bonus kind of inspired me to do that. So I guess
Which
GG on that front, if that was the intention. So well done.
That was yeah, of course.
But GSF, it's not had any sort of like updates or even like new ships added, new components, new engine dies. We haven't seen any of that like for so long. Is this just because the interest in GSF is low? Like, what is going on with GSF? Is it going to be updated?
No, I mean, so this is one of those questions that's kind of like a bucket answer, which is when it comes to really anything in the game, when we're talking about making new content, updates to a system, updates to a thing, it always comes down to what can we do in a given time frame, right? And so, and this isn't actually necessarily true, but this is just kind of an example of we could make 5 Uprisings, or we could do a big update to GSF. Again, I'm not saying that's actually what it is, but like that's kind of the day-to-day decisions that get made. And so I can tell you that the team loves Galactic Starfighter. Like Michael Backus has said many times, like he was the lead designer on Galactic Starfighter. It always has a place in his heart. We all like I can't tell you how much Starfighter we played, especially when it came out. Like the whole live team, me and the community team, plus my boss at the time, like every day we would get lunch brought in and then just play for our entire lunch break every day for like 2 months. We all really do genuinely like Starfighter, and it's something we would love to add onto at some point. It's just a question of when and if we can. So, I mean, we love Starfighter as well, and it's definitely not forgotten. It's still something we talk about. It's just a question of when we might be able to do something for it.
So if I was to ask you then, just for any fans out there of GSF that might be watching, would you be able to, or maybe not, confirm that GSF will get attention eventually?
I mean, I will never say never to anything. So the thing is, outside of knowing something specific is going to happen, I don't want to say, yes, GSF's going to get some stuff. And I definitely would never say, no, GSF isn't going to get anything. And I know that's kind of a non-answer, but it's unfortunately the truth. I don't know of anything happening to GSF in the short term, but I definitely would never say that GSF's not going to get anything. And I know that's kind of a non-answer, but that's really the truth.
Yeah, I think it really could use something new in there, just to bring or attract new people.
No,
But
I get you.
like I said, the whole bonus thing took me in there anyway. So again, GG on that. It worked. Okay, right. So this next one's a pretty long-winded one, I guess. So this is going to tie in with one of my next segments, which I'll go for next anyways, which is community involvement. Now, I'm going to say that I remember seeing or hearing this because I was talking with my friend Mark about this, and I can't remember if it was me who came up with this or if I'd actually just seen it somewhere. I was in like that situation, like, did I come up with this? It sounds like I came up with this.
I'm glad that you have the sense of self to realize that that's a thing that happens sometimes, right? We're like, this was my idea, right? Was it? I don't even know if it was my idea.
So just for the sake of being careful, I'm not going to take credit for it. So I'll just say that I remember hearing this somewhere, I guess.
Fair enough.
So this idea is for PvP. Now, the idea is that players can create their own Warzone that BioWare could sort of like visit and review and approve to like be actually put into the game. Now, the way this would work would be essentially like a stronghold, right? So we take a location like, let's just say Odessen, for example. We have an Odessen scenery. And the players can go into this Odessen scenery, and there's a whole bunch of hooks, a whole bunch of different things that they can put down, like the fire pits, the acid pits. You know, they can essentially just create the Warzone through decorations. And then they just simply, you know, say that they want this one to be a football match. And then BioWare comes in season. It's like, oh yeah, that's actually pretty cool. And we didn't even need to do any of the work. So yeah, let's put that into the game. I know that's like probably not something that's like ever going to happen, but what do you think of that idea? Do you think that's a good idea?
So I think the core premise of the idea is a great one, right? Which is suggestions being made with a lot of, I would say work, but like a lot of detail behind them in how someone sees them being implemented and sees how they work and that type of stuff. I think that's all that's cool to see. The stretch of a player building something, especially like I think the original suggestion is like someone could build it in a stronghold or something. Really what that means is someone's building an environment and an idea of how that environment would work. Unfortunately, that's a very far throw from something being built and implemented as a Warzone. Right. But that doesn't mean that it's not a good thing. I think the other thing that becomes very challenging, and I think we'll probably talk about this a little bit later if we're going to talk about suggestions and stuff, is someone making a suggestion of like, we should build this war zone, and then us taking it and directly transporting it into the game is a little complicated, right? Because that's your idea, not ours. Like, that's not us building something. So unless we built an entire program around like a build a war zone contest or something like that, where it was clearly established that that's what was going to happen, it gets a little trickier to do. But I think it's cool. Like, don't get me wrong. I understand, as someone who plays video games, I completely understand the idea of you love a game and you're like, man, it would be awesome if they did this thing. Let me build it to show them. I think that stuff's awesome. I love seeing the crazy, cool, creative stuff that players come up with that they would like to see in the game. And those are suggestions that get passed on. But yeah.
I feel like a lot of players think like that, to be honest. You know, why don't they do this for the game? They should do this. Why aren't they doing this? Put this in the game. I definitely feel like that. Yeah. Almost every day I'm like, why isn't this in the game? But obviously, yeah. Okay, so we're just going to move straight on to community involvement since I tied that one in there. Right. Okay. Here it is. Right. So this is something that is, I guess, not just personal to the community, but also something that is personal to me because like yourself, feedback is quite important, and especially with being a content creator, I feel like feedback is like my main source of my next video. So when it comes to people posting suggestions on the suggestion box forum, like how seriously or how would you guys like choose, or I don't know, just like how would you look at that information and decide what is a good suggestion to take from the suggestion box?
So the suggestion box is an interesting place. Like we've got the suggestion box itself is something that like as community manager, I've gotten almost more questions about than anything else because one, we don't ever post in there ever. And that's by design because I don't want to, if I post in someone's thread, to people, that tends to indicate something. One, that thread got attention and the others didn't. Two, it shows some kind of indication that this suggestion may be better than others or may be implemented, whereas others may not. So we have to be very careful about that. The way I treat the suggestion box is that I read the suggestion box. I look through it to see what people are talking about, what people are thinking is, oh, that's a cool idea. It'd be cool if they did that. It'd be, no, that's a bad idea. I'm not really in favor of that. It's kind of seeing the ebbs and flows of what ideas people are really latching onto, where they're like, oh, that's cool. And then where there's opportunities where the dev team is talking about doing a thing, that we can attach suggestions, that's what we do. And a lot of times it ends up like, sometimes it's big ideas. Sometimes it's, nuances of ideas, like I'll give you an example, which is not true, but just one that seems like a decent example. Like we did Strongholds, right? And let's say internally we were talking about that we were going to do hooks to put decorations up as opposed to putting freeform decorations. Maybe one of the suggestions before people even knew that is, oh, it'd be cool if you could like change the templates of the hooks. Like that would be the kind of thing where when we're talking about Strongholds, I could be like, hey guys, what if we did something like this? This was something that players seem to think is a cool idea. So that's kind of how we treat suggestions. It's not necessarily like someone has a singular thread with a single idea and I send that up to the whole leadership team of like, put this in the game tomorrow. It's not usually quite that like one-to-one simplicity. It's usually just kind of a general sense of what people are looking around and rallying around as being cool ideas.
So you guys just sort of use that forum as a reference for what players are kind of looking for?
Yes and no. So I use it personally as kind of a litmus test for that. But I can tell you that especially like cartel market items, stronghold decorations, like that kind of stuff, man, there has been tons of stuff that the team has gone in and been like, wow, you're right. That decoration or, that thing was on the wall in an operation. That totally should be a Stronghold decoration, and they just do it. So I can only speak personally that I use it as kind of a litmus test, but there are definitely instances where the team will see suggestions, especially for items type of stuff, that it gets pulled quite frequently.
So how often is the suggestion box forum looked at?
I mean, if I am at my desk, I have 3 monitors. One of those monitors is dedicated to the forums. Right. And so at all times, I am looking through all of the forums, looking at stuff. So daily, for sure.
Daily.
Yep.
Right. So this is where I kind of wanted to put you on the spot a little bit.
So, do you? Because you're going to ask me about things that are in the suggestion box?
I am going to ask you what was the last suggestion that you looked at in the suggestion box.
I honestly can't tell you. I honestly don't know.
You don't know?
And even if I did, it would worry me because this would fall under the same rule of that I would tell you threads that I'm reading, and I don't want to imply to people that I'm leaning towards suggestions. But honestly, I'm not even going to use that excuse. I genuinely don't know.
You genuinely don't know? Okay. Yep. Okay. I just wanted to throw that one in there. Never mind.
That's fair.
Okay. So pulling this back up, I did have another question which tied to this. Here we go. I guess you kind of answered this already in your explanation there about decorations. So aside from the decorations thing, which you just mentioned then about people mentioning, that was on the wall, that should totally be a decoration. Could you provide an example of a time a suggestion was used in game? You don't have to name something specifically.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I can tell you honestly, the easiest things ever to give as this example. When there is a general consensus, this is kind of where I say like the litmus test. Look at Galactic Starfighter. Taking space off of rails. The word space off of rails was mentioned so many times before we did Starfighter. Or how about Galactic Strongholds or Guild capital ships? These are the kinds of things where it's not to say that we didn't ever think to do those things. It's just that when we're talking about what should we build, what should we do, when we saw that type of stuff, especially like I would say the years before we did those things, there was not a single cantina we ever had where someone didn't ask a question about those features during the Q&A. And so those are really, really strong signals to us of like, people really want this stuff. We should work on trying to do it. So those are 3 examples for you.
Excellent. Well, 3. I was just looking for one, but...
Yeah, and those are, I mean, genuinely, those are things that, especially from cantinas, but just in general, like players really asked for quite a bit. And so we work to try to deliver. Yeah,
and I guess this leads me to another question, and that's, because I'm assuming, well, I've seen it anyways, that suggestions are made all the time. Feedback is delivered all of the time. Like, how do you handle that feedback? Because surely you get so much of it, and it must be such a variation of that feedback. Like, how do you handle that feedback? Like, how do you cipher it?
I mean, that kind of comes down to I think is the crux of your question, like, how do I pass that information onto the dev team?
Maybe not like how you pass it on, but sort of like, because maybe you like have to tally it or something, like this thing was mentioned so many times, this must be like what the players want to do.
I wish I was capable of doing parsing like that. Really, what it just comes down to is kind of a sense of just things that people are saying. You know, if there's suggestions that are standout good ideas or minor tweaks to things that can be made, that's the kind of stuff that I'll usually try to pass on to the team immediately, especially if it's relevant at the time. Of just like hey, we're doing this thing. What if we just made this minor change? Like this seems like this is a great idea. Versus bigger ideas which come up in bigger areas. I mean, like you said, a lot of it is, especially suggestion stuff, a lot of it tends to be people's personal, like, oh man, I wish this thing just did this thing this way instead of the way it is. And a lot of those tend to be one-offs of just kind of a person's individual feelings on it. But even then, like, I try to read as much of them as I can so that should the opportunity arise where they would become relevant as a thing that we're changing or looking at, that information could be passed on.
Excellent. Like, I really do imagine there being a lot of feedback to go through, so I kind of feel sorry for you sometimes. Like, especially when the whole Galactic Command thing happened, I was like...
But that's fine. I mean, seeing all of the ideas that, even for Galactic Command, right? Like, seeing all of the ideas people have of how to fix it. Because I will tell you this, as someone who reads a lot of player feedback, players are exceptionally good at discovering problems. For sure. Like, suggestions tends to be what are the solutions to those problems, which aren't necessarily as big picture to always be directly implemented. But finding problems is something that players are better at than anybody.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, I don't know if you're aware, but me and my friend Talia, mentioned him earlier. We actually have this video series where we do this thing called Beyond the Walls. It's kind of the thing that really started my channel and really got it popular, I guess. And the first time we did it anyways, is we were just goofing around on Korriban, and we were just playing around with the Force Push and the Sorcerer Phase Walk combination. Yep. Just trying to like get on top of turrets and stuff. And then eventually we sort of realized, hey, you know, this invisible wall here, it can be jumped over. I was like, okay, let's explore this, right? And so, like, do you guys, like, just for me here real quick, do you guys, like, condone that? Is that okay to do?
As long as that there is no gain that you are getting from it, that would create it, that would make it problematic. Sure. I would say knock yourself out. Like, an example would be when Ziost first came out, people found a way to get into it, right? And those people then had action taken against them because that's exploitive. So as long as it's just, hey, look at this cool place I got to, that's fine.
So I guess you could probably clear up a question for me, if you know about it anyways. And that's, so on the planet Belsavis, we did a trip there one time, and we discovered something very familiar, which happened to be some form of template for Section X on the actual planet Belsavis, not in the instance of Section X. Okay. Did you know that existed?
No, I did not.
So we found this, and obviously we're like, okay, let's go in here. And then eventually we sort of like realized, oh, this is Section X. Like, what is this doing here? So we assumed it was a template, and after like more digging around, like, we gained nothing. I promise we exploited nothing. Okay, we didn't gain any titles or anything. And so we were goofing around, and on the floor where the lava was supposed to be, there was like a texture, and I'm not joking, it was in the exact same shape as a heart. So it was almost like there was some sort of like some developer or whatever the person's called that does textures was just sort of goofing around and put a heart in the lava, and it was really weird but really cool at the same time.
It is totally fun. I imagine there are probably like a billion Easter eggs that our dev team has put in this game that I am unaware of.
Yeah.
Now I am aware of it. I'm going to go back and find out what's there.
We really want an Easter egg for us to find, like a Swtor Central Easter egg. Make it happen. Totally.
Done.
Okay. It has to have Valkorian's armor set in it there, like a chest somewhere, which specifically says Swtor Central. And then when you open it up, it gives you Valkorian's armor set.
And you right click on it and it puts his chest piece on you, and then you walk one step away and it comes off. It's like, you can dress like them, but you have to stay right here
That would
forever.
be evil. That
Forever.
would be evil, man. Okay. So I did want to bring up server merges, but somebody actually did tell me that this was being cleared up. Like this was brought up by you guys at some point. Is that true?
Yeah, we talked about it on one of the producer live streams.
Yep. I know you guys were saying that you were going to be monitoring everything and just seeing what's going to work, what is going to work best, and how to proceed with that. But I mentioned this specifically about Prophecy of the Five and Tomb of Freedom Nard to somebody, and they said that merges were happening. Is that true?
That is not something that we have said.
Oh, right. Okay.
No.
So I was.
So what we have said is basically what you said, which is that we know that there are certainly some servers that have lower populations. That will always be the case, regardless of anything, and that we'll keep an eye on it, especially now that we're past launch and moving into next year. We'll keep an eye on it and see if something needs to be done.
Yeah. I mean, from experience, obviously you guys probably know more than what I do anyway, since you guys can monitor it. But after my visit to Pot 5 and Tomb of Freedom Nard, they were empty. There was no one there. Virtually no one. Not compared to what I'm used to on the Reddit clips. Yeah. Okay. So let's just move away from server merges, because I know I'm just going to be sort of like wasting my time there, I guess, because you guys have already said what you're doing was what you're doing.
Yeah.
So I want to move on to customization. Now, customization is something that is really important, I think, anyways, for a game. And this whole flare thing that you've added to the game as well, where you can now have a new portrait, I think that's pretty cool. It's actually a pretty neat feature. I assume you're going to be adding more anyways for like achievements and things like that. This guy, I did this, and now I'm going to show it off here. And actually, I think one for Dark versus Light probably should be added. Just as something little extra there. Hey, I grinded for 2 months. Look at my play frame. Proves it.
Right.
Okay, so customization. So yeah, as I said, I believe it's a key feature, and especially when it comes to like attaching a player to the game. So if you're a new player and you enter the game and you see a whole bunch of customization, especially for your user interface, I think you guys are really good with the user interface compared to other MMOs. You can snap it to the grid, you can free move it. I think it's really, really, really cool. But the one thing that you've never given the option to do is to change the color of the interface. Now, in my eyes, I would assume that this is something that's really easy to do, but I'm assuming that's not the case. So I did make a video on this, a complete dedicated video to user interface color, and people went wild. Like, that video blew up. People loved it. Everybody wants it. I used Photoshop. Oh, sorry, once again. I used Photoshop to sort of like tweak the colors, and I had like red, green, silver. It looked awesome. Like, it really did, especially the red one, and you're on a Sith character. It looked, oh my god, it was perfect. So why don't we have this?
Two-part. Part one, it's the joke that I tell people, which is not really a joke, it's actually the truth, is typically when it comes to a suggestion, if the first part of the suggestion is, I imagine this is easy to do, usually it's not.
Yep.
It's actually the very opposite of it. But I don't know. I'm not a game developer. It's just been what I've learned, what I've seen in my experience anyway. But what I can tell you is, I saw the video. I thought it also looked pretty cool. And the team is aware of the suggestion. That is what I can tell you.
So the team is doing it then, right?
I would have no idea. But
you can blink twice if somebody's like pointing something at you right now.
I'm alone in a room. So luckily no one's pointing at me.
Okay. So with that first thing there in mind, the customization thing, I wanted to just move on to a bunch of other different customizable things, I guess. But I think from what you've said so far, it's really just going to tie into like the whole suggestion thing.
Right.
But I'll throw it in anyways, and I'll just see what you have to say, I guess. And because customization can be done for a lot of things, especially with outfits, which you guys did with Outfit Designer, which is brilliant. But we don't have that for weapons just yet. Not really sure why. I guess maybe this is just another one of them scenarios where it's not as easy on your end.
Yeah, it's. I can tell you that's definitely something we want to do. It's just a question of, as with all things, just a question of when we could get it done. Because we know that it would be that obviously is a very cool thing to be able to stamp a gear set on you, even if it's not exactly what you're wearing, so you can look a specific way, and your weapon is a very important part of your look as well. So
yeah, to be honest, I think the only real advantage is just going to be for the use of like legacy stuff, I guess. Other than that, I think people would the only other advantage would be just saving some money on augmenting new stuff or a new weapon that I really want to use or something.
Or like weapon tunings, not having to deal with that kind of, yeah. No, we know there's value. There's value.
Okay, so this brings me to the next one, and this is definitely a big one. And I know that people ask for this all of the time, and I even joked about this in my Why Swtor Fun video, and that is a HUD toggle. Now, this is brought up so many times, and to be honest, I'm fed up of seeing it because it's such a minor thing, and I like HUDs anyways. I don't mind having a HUD, but I understand why some people don't want to have a HUD because, you know, your hair goes invisible. Sometimes it will clip with certain things. You know, it doesn't always look great. Sometimes it does. But I think, actually, you guys kind of rectified the situation. I mean, obviously not because we don't have HUD toggle, but if you just look at the Dark Versus Light vendors that we have now, there is actually 2 gear pieces for one of the chest pieces, one with a HUD and one without. So we just do that for everything, right? Just get one with a HUD down, one with a HUD up, right? Yeah.
So HUD toggle, I mean, you're not wrong, right? Like, it's something people have been asking for a long time. It's one of those things that we definitely would like to try to do at some point. It's obviously it's a very complex thing to do, which is why we haven't done it at this point. Doesn't mean we would never do it, but as kind of a stopgap solution, there are definitely armor sets that have both HUD up and HUD down versions. We very much understand the desire for it. One, both from a cosmetic side. Also, we know that it's something that I don't like hoods. So I understand why people don't necessarily want them as well. So that's what it is.
So sort of just at the same time there, what about the people who do like hoods, but then they have their hair just shaven? Like, what about, is that something maybe that's being looked at? Or?
I mean, that's always the kind of stuff, like anything involving a character's appearance is always things we're trying to look at ways to improve. So.
Right. Okay. Right, so the next segment was community involvement, which we already went over. And then the next segment was Galactic Command. Now, I have a very, very big write-up on this, and actually I have such a good example, which I pitched to my friend Telly, and he was like, whoa, that is like such a weird way of explaining it, but it's so true. And I was like, maybe, I don't know. But I guess we have some news on this front.
Yep. I mean, today is Wednesday that we're recording this. Yep. So on tomorrow's stream, we're going to talk about changes we have to start to address some of the bigger points of feedback people have about Galactic Command. Yep. So we'll talk about those on tomorrow's stream.
Yeah. So you can be assured that I was going to talk about Galactic Command, correct, but I got halted because I've been given hope that some things are being changed. So,
I said, I was like, we can still talk about it. It's just that it's probably not going to be that valuable because we're maybe changing some things and talking about some stuff tomorrow. So
yeah, so we'll skip past it, and then we're going to come back to it another time, hopefully, maybe next week at some point. We may or may not do a follow-up interview, and we've yet to work that one out, I guess. But yeah, for now, we have the stream tomorrow, which you probably would have already watched before this video. So there you go, videoception. Okay. Next one is dev communication. Now, I don't know if this is like a touchy one or not. Like, a lot of people seem to think that you guys don't have the best communication with the community, especially when it comes to things like, just for example here, Galactic Command. Like, that was like a super big change, and it was sort of just like thrown on everybody, but anybody really been known about it too far in advance. I guess that's probably a bad example. But I think you know where I'm going with this. And so what would be your response to somebody if they was to stand in front of you and just say, hey, Eric, you guys have bad communication. Justify yourself.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those things where we can always get better at everything. And communication is certainly one of them. I won't stand anywhere and say that we are the best communicators on the earth. I don't think we're bad communicators either, though. I think what becomes very challenging, especially with what information people are typically looking for, tends to be future information. And future information is always the hardest thing to share, frankly. And it's kind of one of those things. You and I talked about this the other day, and I think this is an example that I can give of the operations question, right? Like, we get questions about the future of operations all the time. And we don't mean to necessarily be coy. One of the things might be like, why don't we just say, hey, we are doing an operation, we'll give you more information soon. And this is a 100% valid question that I understand. And as an example, the reason we may not say that is because maybe we are going to do 8 or 16-man content, but maybe it's just going to look a little bit different than you might expect it to look, or something like that. And so the trick is, if I say, yes, we're going to do an operation, you immediately think it means something. It immediately means something to you, whether that means it's 8 and 16-man, 3 different difficulty modes, 5 bosses with a new tier of gear. Maybe that's exactly what comes to your mind, but maybe that's not what it is. And so whenever we have things like that talking about the future, it's one of the the dangers we have is that we tend to not talk about stuff until we have enough information so that we can also tell you what it is, so that you don't have to set an expectation, because we don't want you to be disappointed either. We want you to know what to expect. And so that's one of the reasons that we kind of communicate coyly about the future stuff, where we say, hey, we are refocusing on group content. We're going to have announcements about group content. That's a thing that's going to happen. We're just not more specific because we don't have more specifics to give yet in a concrete way.
Right.
And so that's where that comes with future stuff. Current stuff gets a little bit trickier, right? Like Galactic Command. Galactic Command's a challenging one because all of the things that we said were true, but they may not have been the things people wanted to hear, right? Like we weren't going to not do Galactic Command's gearing. We weren't just going to press delete before Kotet launched, but we 100% understand of, hey, it's not going to be perfect. We know that there'll be changes that are going to need to be made, and we've made changes to Galactic Command every update we've had, and we're announcing more tomorrow that are coming in the next update, which are even bigger changes. And so kind of what we said is we're going to let it go. We know that there's definitely some concerns, some of them very valid concerns. We just want the system to come out so we can take a look at it, see how things go, and then we'll make adjustments. We're 100% on board with making changes. And we said all of those things. But what we didn't say is, okay, we're not going to do Galactic Command. And so that's one of those tricks that comes with communicating, because we didn't say what people were necessarily asking in some situations that they feel like we weren't hearing them, but we are. Like, please always give us feedback. We're always listening to it, and we'll respond when we can to that feedback.
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head there. I think it's just this misconception of somebody asks a question, and because they don't get that answer, and you said this as well, David did. They don't believe they did get an answer because that wasn't the answer they were looking for.
Right. Yeah, and I completely understand where that comes from, right? Like, especially when people have these big concerns about, like, if they feel like we're making the wrong decisions, and they want to ask a question with the hope of that it will steer that decision making, and that is completely valid, right? That's the purpose of feedback. That's partially why I have a job, right? Is to make sure that feedback gets to the dev team, and so we can start making changes based on that feedback.
Yep.
And we will. We are, and we will. And so I think one of the challenging things is that stuff takes time, and so a lot of times we may not have an answer right away, and we need time to give an answer. So I think all of those things kind of come into where some of that comes from that we don't communicate. And again, there's always things we could do more, right? Like, for the most part, I'm the one that posts a lot in the forums. The devs don't necessarily post a lot in the forums. Things like that. And there are certainly issues that we haven't been great about communicating about in the past. I'm not going to say that there aren't. So it's always something we're looking to improve.
Okay, so I'm going to give you 2 examples, I guess. Now, as a player, one of the things that, because you said you wanted feedback, so during the Dark versus Light event, and near to the end of it to be more specific, you guys announced double XP. Now, having already completed the Dark versus Light event and being unaware that double XP was coming, I was like, come on, I could have leveled these A classes in double XP and had half the time doing it, but instead I didn't know like this was coming, because otherwise I would have saved that last part until when the double XP came. And I feel like that part of communication is definitely something players should know, rather than just springing it on us and just being like, oh, hey, yeah, double XP tomorrow. Good luck. Even though I've already done my Dark versus Light. And I've got to say that is definitely one of the things that really annoyed me. And I don't get annoyed often, but that really, that got to me. I was like, come on. I guess the next thing as well is, again, just back to this misconception. And I've been looking at this on the forums and on the Reddit, and people are speculating around what you guys are saying, and that is, you guys are saying that you're going, because on the streams you said 8-man. 8-man group content is coming. Now, this wasn't directed, you guys didn't say it's going to be PvE, you didn't say it's going to be PvP, you didn't specify what it's going to be, you just said 8-man content. And this is leading people to believe that this means that you are going to be doing 8-man PvP, more 8-man PvP. And some of the GSF people have been sort of speculating in here and thinking, oh, hey, this is going to be something for GSF for sure. But we know it's not. But so just on the off chance, and I'm going to really try and push this, because this is like the only bit of criticism I have, is just the fact that we don't get, this is coming, more information than, like you said, even though you said it can be tricky. So if I was to sort of structure my question like this content that is being worked on, right? You've said that it's 8-man. And I think, Kelly, you said 16-man as well. So I'm going to go with 8-man and 16-man content. Is this content going to be PvP oriented, or is it going to be PvE oriented?
And I would say that I can't answer that question.
I knew that was coming. So, so there's like no way at all you could maybe say it was for PvP or PvE, or even both. Why not both, right? No? Okay. Well, it was worth a shot. Yep. Of course.
And so the funny thing is, one of the questions that's always interesting to me and tricky to answer is the working on question. Because like we've worked on things before that have never come out ever, that got scrapped. And so that's another reason why when people are like, oh, are you working on a new Warzone? Be like, we might be working on 7 Warzones, but none of them might ever come out. And so I'm not going to say that, because then you're expecting something that doesn't come. That's the tricky thing, is like once we've said that something, and that's why we're fairly general with saying like we're working on group content, because we're confident we'll deliver group content, but we're not necessarily specifying exactly what it is, because we just need to make sure we know what it is, what's going to get to your hands before we get there.
Right. Okay. Now, I have also seen speculation around operations as well. And I even speculated around this myself a little bit. And I was like thinking, Herald's a Zildrog, what's up with that? Let's get an op there. But some people are thinking that because of the performance issues with the game, because let's face it, 16-man content, you go in, you're not getting 60 FPS. That's not happening. You could have the best of the best in this machine, and you probably won't get 60 FPS in a 16-man situation. Now, if you do, then please give me your rig. If not, then, pretty much everyone doesn't. I like to think that I have a fairly nice setup, and especially in other games, I can run other games really, really, really well. And I guess the point here is people believe that more group content that is that big on a scale hasn't been hitting the game because of performance issues. Is there any truth behind that?
No. I
didn't think so. Thank you, though. Okay.
I mean, unless you're talking like Ilum days, which, yeah, we're probably not going to do that. But I mean, to be fair, like we have done a tremendous amount of optimization over the years. So, no.
This last one that you've done as well, I'm
actually... At least not to my knowledge, anyway.
Very glad about this last one. Actually, prior to 5.0, if I was to just stand around on the fleet with, max people, limited, whatever, I would get anywhere between like 40 and 60 FPS, but these days I get like 120 plus. So whatever you did, it worked. So well done. It wasn't like a massive gain in the big scale group content, but I think I have nice performance in like 8-man stuff anyway. So I think it's just mainly the 16-man stuff, everything on a bigger scale, especially open world PvP. I was in an Oricon match not so long ago, and wow, it was very laggy. Okay. So moving on, because I'm assuming we're going to be hitting the end of this interview pretty soon. So I want to bring up something which I think should be brought up, and that is the preferred status players. Now, I mean this directly as somebody who has subbed past Kotet launch. So let's just say somebody's subscription runs out tomorrow, and they're going to lose access to Galactic Command, essentially. And then they're going to be hit with all these limits, such as your crew skill limits, your unifying clothes if they've not already unlocked that kind of stuff, you had your head slot, and more specifically, the credit cap. Now, the credit cap for a preferred status player, I believe, is 350,000 credits. And with the end game the way it is now, compared to what it was before, because before, if you were a preferred player, you could just buy an ops pass, or you could be given an ops pass by somebody with more credits, and you could go do the end game content. You could essentially play the game for free. And with Quartet, that's no longer the case, because you can play the end game, I guess, after unlocking the expansion. But as soon as you hit preferred status, you're not going to gain rewards from Galactic Command, and that's correct, right?
Correct.
So would it not then be fair? I'm gonna use the word fair, to lift the credit cap for preferred status players, for people who have supported the expansion, who have bought into the expansion and supported it thus far or whatever, and then have their credit cap raised so that they can have more credits, I guess. And that's something to just sort of alleviate the fact that they can no longer buy ops passes and that kind of thing.
Sure.
What do you think?
So here's what I can tell you. So the restrictions, especially for preferred, that's something that we talk about quite a bit, especially with Knights of the Eternal Throne, as you mentioned, with the access to endgame stuff changing because of the introduction of Galactic Command. That's something we talk about frequently, about where we may be able to make changes to change or remove restrictions for those sets of players. Just as a note, at least right now, there is zero difference between a preferred player who is level 1 and a preferred player who's level 65. Like, there is no difference. If you're a preferred status player, you are a preferred status player. So now introducing something where if you hit level cap and then you become preferred, you have a different credit cap on that character or something, that's totally possible as a thing. But at least right now, there is no difference between those things. So that's the only thing I just want to point out about your suggestion, is there is no differentiation currently about the status of someone. Someone is either a preferred status player or not. There isn't a delineator of when you became preferred.
Right. Okay.
So we would put
something past the expansion or something before the expansion. Is that what
correct,
you mean?
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Correct. Now, not to say we couldn't do that, but at least right now, in the limitations and stuff that exist are universal depending on what your status is.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
But that is honestly that is a
sense.
good suggestion, that we could make adjustments based on what their status is as a preferred status player.
Yeah. Maybe you can have like a Quartet status.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, honestly, I didn't want to move into the free to play sort of thing, because as people who watch my videos will know anyways, I have a very strong opinion on people who believe they should get things for free. So what would be your response to somebody who thinks that they should get everything in game for free? That one person that you see on the forums is like, hey, I never bought the expansion, I never subbed, but I can't hide my head slot, I can't unify my colors, please die.
But
you see that, right?
I understand the desire to have that, right? Like, that's amazing. But the nice thing is, regardless of any restrictions or any of that stuff that we may have, genuinely a free-to-play player who's playing Star Wars The Old Republic gets access to literally the most recorded audio and longest story of any video game ever made for free.
Yeah.
So I get that there are restrictions. Believe me, I understand that's, there may be frustration in some of those, but genuinely, I think we have a pretty good serving of content for a free-to-play player. The idea that just without paying $1, you could play all 8 class stories. That is hundreds of hours of gameplay for free.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I understand a desire to get a lot for free, and I think that you do get a lot for free with being free to play for Star Wars.
You definitely do. And you can still do some group content as a free-to-play player up until level 50, so there really should be no complaints. So I'm with you guys on this one, don't worry. Okay, so we're going to move on to just the miscellaneous questions, and I'm just going to run through these really quickly because I'm assuming we've probably overstepped the time limit anyways.
Okay.
So let's just run through this. Now, a Swtor 2 game. I've heard about this so many times. I've had myths, along with this thing called the Queen of the Sands, whatever that is. I heard about that too. Swtor 2, is it a thing? Will it ever happen? Let's put some people's minds at ease.
The best I could say is that I have no recollection of any of this being a thing. In fact, you've just said more words than I even know about, so I don't know.
So even the Queen of the Sands, do you know anything about that? No,
I've never heard. I don't even know what that is. Where did you hear that?
I feel like I'm being played here.
No, I genuinely don't. Here's the thing. When it comes to here's the trick. Anytime someone says, "Hey, I heard a rumor," usually it means they probably just made it up and posted it, right? Unless there is any source of truth, it's not. That's not true.
So I think there was some truth behind this Queen of the Sands thing. Like I don't know too much about it, but apparently it was supposed to be some sort of summonable world boss in Outlaw's Den. Now, if you think of the Outlaw's Den, the main building in the middle one with the GTN kiosk inside, on the roof there is a hole on the roof, and you can actually climb into this if you're very clever and use force push and all kinds of other stuff. And there used to be an item in there that you could use, but it did nothing. You'd just use it and nothing would happen. And I'm not sure when that was removed, but it was removed at some point, so it's no longer there. But that was a thing at some point, and people were saying it was something to do with a Queen of the Sands summonable world boss. I was just very curious about that, to be honest.
I am, again, this is probably qualifies under the millions of Easter eggs that probably exist in the game that I'm unaware of, but I will ask.
Fair enough. Maybe it was just an Easter egg then, and people were just...
Now I'm intrigued.
Speculating. Okay, so, this next one. And I like this one, because I'm all for this one. Pazaak in the game. I loved playing Pazaak in the KOTOR games. Swoop races and pod racing. Now, just two pod racing for a second here, because obviously I went through these questions with a friend of mine, and he said that pod racing wasn't around in the timeline that the Old Republic is in. And I was like, oh my god, you could be right. Like, was it around? And I was like, would that fit lore-wise? I was like, oh my god, I didn't do research on this. And I've still not done research on this, and I'm hoping to get the answer from you. So, yeah, Pazaak, Swoop races, and pod racing.
You start asking lore questions. You need Charles Boyd here. I have no idea the answer to that question. But here's what I will tell you to Pazaak and Swoop Racing, because those certainly come up a lot as well. Yeah. This is going to go back to an answer I've probably given like 4 times, which is we're all Star Wars fans. We love Pazaak and Swoop Racing. It's just a question of if we do that, we don't do something else. When could we do it? It would probably be a massive undertaking to implement something like that. The mini games like that are awesome. And it's definitely something we would love to do, but just a question of if and when and what we won't do to do that instead.
Okay, so in light of them, you saying that it's either, like, essentially it's one thing or the other that we work on at one time.
It's not quite like that, but go ahead.
Yeah, well, so just tying this back into community involvement, because I left the question out earlier. If there was to be, like, a form of poll or voting system, so let's say you guys are announcing 10 new uprisings for February. Let's just say there's 10 new uprisings coming, or which you are going to work on or whatever. Or we can do Pazaak Championship, right? Do you think that this would be a good thing for the game, so that way the players actually get to choose the content that they want in the game? Now, I know that uprisings would win by a landslide there, but just as an example, what do you reckon?
No, only because... 2 reasons. One, it would be insanely difficult to poll players, because where would the poll go? Who would we ask? And that's tricky. Like, example, if you put a poll on the forums and on Reddit, you're talking about an exceptionally small percentage of the player base, and you're talking about the very engaged core section of the player base.
Okay.
Like, if you look, operations, very high in demand. Yep. That's from the core players, because they're the ones that play operations.
Yep.
We know that a not huge percentage of players play operations, but there's a desire for them from that group. And that's important. That's why forums and Reddit stuff exist, to get that kind of feedback. So one, polling would be interesting, but it'd be very difficult to do because it would depend on where you asked it. Now, in-game is the most logical place.
Yep.
But even then, it still has a bias, because you would still need someone who's actually going to log in that time period, actually open it, and actually fill it out. So that's the trickiness on number 1. The other tricky thing on number 2 is what it means, right? Like, if I said to you, hey, we're going to put swoop racing in the game, what is it? Right? Like, what is swoop racing to you? Like, what is it? If I asked you and then I asked 5 other people what swoop racing was if we put it in Star Wars, they'd probably get 5 different answers.
It's drag racing in the underworld. You avoid obstacles and you set a record. That is right. Swoop racing.
Right. It's that simple, but then do we have customization for your swoop bikes? Can you change who your driver is? Can you change, like, there's all these things where, like, people have different ideas of what a system is. And so I think the other thing that would be challenging is, like, your version of swoop racing versus someone else's version of swoop racing versus what we would put in the game as swoop racing are not necessarily the same. So you aren't necessarily voting on the same thing in a manner.
My version or nowhere.
Right. So I don't know. I think I think that being able to get information from what players on what they're looking for and what they want is insanely valuable. And I don't want to undersell that by any stretch. But I don't know that something as simple as we're going to do one of these two things, pick one, probably not likely. Now, we've done things like it-ish in the past where, like, here's 3 rewards. We're going to give you one of them for free. Or we're going to give you one of them, pick one. We did that with the Celebration Jawa back in the day. Right. And we had the Celebration Jawa, the Hollow Rancor, and the third one, which I don't remember what it is. Maybe. No. I don't know. Anyway, there was a third one. And so we let people vote on which one they would get. And what we ended up doing is we had all 3 done. They were picking which one they got for free. They just didn't know it. So they got that one for free, and then people could just buy the ones that didn't win if they wanted them. Because ultimately we knew that, let's say 51% vote for 10 Uprisings and 49% vote for Pazaak. That means 49% are going to be real upset because they didn't get the thing they wanted.
Yep.
So it just gets really challenging in that regard, I think.
So what if you were to like sort of put this as a test run, right? Let's just satisfy the fact that you were going to do it, right? And let's say you do have a window, you log into the game, and the first thing that comes up is a news window, let's just say. And there's 3 options there, and you get to vote for one. Let's say free-to-players get no votes because nobody cares about free-to-play players. Let's say preferred status players get 2. Come on, it's true. Let's say the preferred players get 2 votes just because they've supported the game previously. And it says subscribers get 5 votes because, sure, we're the subscribers and we deserve it. We're awesome. Okay, so let's say that the 3 things you get to choose from are the next cartel market item. Could be a mount, could be an outfit, could be a weapon, could be whatever. You get to vote, and then that's what's going to hit the cartel market next week. And then would that not be like a good way to see if that sort of system was going to work, and then maybe sort of work it up until you get to like smaller content updates, maybe like new PvP map? Do you want Oricon? Do you want Makeb? Do you want Displace? That kind of thing? Possible,
but there's about 10 challenges in what you just presented. Like an example, cartel market item is just an item that you buy. It's very different than content. So it really wouldn't act as a test for where people would go. Like I said, I don't want to undersell. I love the idea of getting player feedback on where exactly they want to go and what they want to do and what they want to see in content. Just the idea of getting a real direct idea of what that is pretty challenging. And this is just me speaking how I see it as community manager. I just think it would be very difficult to get an accurate representation of that in a meaningful way.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I think that clears it up, really. I mean, I was definitely curious about what you guys thought, like a voting poll system, because they do use it. Not that I want to compare you guys to another MMO.
Sure.
Why would I do that? RuneScape, you're probably familiar with RuneScape. Awesome game. RS3, probably people shouting at me right now because they play old school, but RS3, I loved it. Still love it. Don't really play it much these days. I mean, I'm too busy playing Swtor and doing other stuff, but they have like a voting system. It's not necessarily for like content updates, but more for like, which boss is next. And I guess for content updates as well, actually. I think they did raids at one point. I don't know. I just thought it was like a really cool feature to see in RuneScape. And I was like, what if that was like adapted into Swtor? That would be amazing.
I think it's super cool. And I can tell you, like, one of the things that personally I try to do is I try to look at what other games are doing to see like ideas. When there's crazy, cool, creative ideas like that of like, hey, we're doing, we're going to allow our community to vote on what we build next. Like, that's crazy. Like, that's super ambitious. And I would love to, like, when I see those things, that's when it's like, I want to see data. Like, did it work? Like, did you build content? Did more players play the content because they voted on it? Did people stay? Did people stay interested because they were looking forward to that content? How long did it take you to build it from the time you voted on it? Like, there's so many things that are fascinating to me as someone who works at a game company on like other things that other companies do that I think are cool. Like, that's crazy ambitious, the idea of being able to do that.
So
for sure.
Working for an MMO yourself, is that actually something you would do? Would you like contact other MMOs and like sort of, how well did that actually go?
No, not quite.
Okay.
I mean, I have personal friends who are community managers and stuff at other companies, right. And like certainly over drinks we'd be like, hey, this thing, and how'd you do this thing, and like that kind of stuff. But like formally, no.
Yeah, until you get them over 10 drinks and just get it out of them. Spill the beans. Did it work? Did it not? Yeah. Okay, so moving on again, and I'm trying to get through these quickly, I promise. Probably Probably the thing I've definitely seen the most is Manaan Stronghold. Manaan Stronghold, that would be awesome. Somebody even came up with a model of a Manaan Stronghold that looked amazing. It looked really small, but they put the effort in, and that's awesome.
I saw it. It was pretty sweet. It was pretty sweet.
When can we expect the Manaan Stronghold?
I think it's coming out tomorrow. I think something like that.
Oh, really? So we'll just all set our expectations to that, right?
5 credits and another 5-year anniversary.
Why not, right?
Confirmed on stream.
Why do I feel like you're being serious? Are you playing with me right now?
I mean, I can't say though. Like, I can tell you that because one of the other things we get questions about too is Strongholds. I mean, we get questions about when the next everything is coming, but Strongholds is definitely one of the ones that we see quite a bit as well. Again, one of those things we talk about quite a bit internally because Strongholds are cool. So
Strongholds are cool. And I guess my next question was really about the future of Strongholds, but I think I've had enough experience from this interview to know where that's going to go. But I mean, if you want to tell me something about the future of Strongholds, then please feel free.
That's the answer. We know there's a great interest in getting another Stronghold and something that we talk about.
Something that you talk about. I like that. Okay. So next question, and this is just a novelty question, I guess. I already know the answer is no. Flying mounts, is it going to happen?
As community manager, it is part of my mantra that I will never say the words never because you just don't ever know that that's true. But I imagine it is amazingly unlikely that we would ever implement flying mounts.
Right. So you just agree with my no then, and instead of saying never?
Not saying no, I'm just saying really unlikely.
Right. I think that's like the same as a no.
It's pretty close. Really pretty close. No? Percentage-wise, pretty close.
Okay, so where's this one going? Make your own suggestion. Did I not ask that one already? Did I put this in here twice? Okay, I guess the last one was a feature to put into the game, and this one is just a suggestion. Okay, I guess we can roll with that. Do you get to make your own suggestions for the game? I assume you do, anyways. Yeah,
so that's actually a good question. I would say there's 3 ways that I get to make suggestions, sort of. One is I play the game. So just like you guys as a player, when I'm like, hey, I want this thing as a Stronghold decoration, luckily I have the access to go tell the people who make it to just be like, hey, can I have this thing? So that's one. Frankly, I don't actually do very much like that because it seems like a conflict of interest with my job, since my job is to like represent players. 2, and this one is actually probably where it happens, I don't want to say the most, but a lot is, as someone who plays the game, we do a lot of internal play testing. Of content and stuff like that. Like as an example, I'll tell you because people know it exists. I was playtesting Master Mode Chapters earlier this week, and so like going over and being able to talk to the team about like, hey, this is what I experienced. Here's where I think changes may need to be made, or here's kind of how it felt to do it, and so I get to do that quite a bit in playtesting stuff, so that we can then pass that feedback on. And third, and certainly probably the most obvious one, given my job, is, and as I mentioned earlier, I'm in a lot of meetings where design meetings, marketing meetings, all kinds of meetings about various different things where my purpose in that room is to be the voice of the players, to either pass on suggestions players have, to give kind of a litmus test on how players will feel about a certain change or feature. So that's definitely an avenue where I get to make a lot of suggestions on all of your behalf.
That's really cool. So I guess that's one of the times where you do really just look at all of the feedback and then, like you said, the voice. That's good.
Yep.
Like the Emperor's voice, but in real life.
Kind of, yep.
Okay. So I did want to ask you about like leaked information and like data mined information, that kind of thing. So I guess just really quickly, where exactly do you guys stand with this? Like, you don't condone it, obviously, so what's the deal?
Yeah, I mean, it's fairly simple, right? Like, data mining our game client is against our EULA and our terms of service, so we in no way condone that it happens. That being said, it happens. People are going to do it. It exists, on the internet, in MMOs. It is a thing that is going to happen. If people want to look at that information, if people want to, spoil themselves on story and that kind of stuff, they can do it. We are never going to comment on things that are seen in data mined content. Data mined content is in no way accurate because things change in development. it's not like we dislike those people or anything, right? Like there certainly has been instances where, they've even said like, some of the data miners have reached out to us with specific things or things they found or whatever. That's fine. Like we get it. We can't condone it because is against our game agreements, but it's going to happen. It's fine.
But wouldn't accepting that people do it and sort of just maybe letting them get on with it be condoning it though?
I mean, what are we going to send the SWAT team to try to track them down and kick down their door?
Obviously.
If we know who someone is and they are breaking our game terms of service in EULA, they will face action as if they are breaking any other terms of service or EULA action.
Right. So you're saying if you know who's doing it, then you
Yep.
have to shout the punishment.
I mean, an example, right? Like if you go on our forums and you post data mined content, that post will be removed very quickly, and you will probably be taking time off from the forums. And we action that pretty hardly. Just because it's not something that we condone. We can't accept it on the forums. It's not actual information that's official. So in the areas that we control, we're pretty harsh on it, but we know it's going to exist out on the other internet.
The internet. Can't control the internet. Okay.
Correct.
So I think it's fair to say we can end this interview. I think we cleared up quite a few things. I think, yeah. Okay. What do you reckon? Did we go through a lot of stuff there?
Yeah, we did quite a bit, Sam. We didn't even talk about Galactic Command. Think about that.
Yeah, I honestly could have spoken about that for hours. Okay, so obviously you guys get questions all the time, especially with this interview. I'm throwing questions at you. Just as our last thing here, I guess. Don't you guys have questions yourself for us? Like, if you could ask us questions, what would those questions be, other than like feedback from certain areas?
This is going to sound cheeky, but I really don't mean it to.
Okay.
Players have never had a problem telling you what they think. And I mean that in the best way possible. I know it's one of the things that people often are like, to people who are community managers, they're often like, how do you do your job just getting yelled at that you should get fired and die every day? And it's like, look, people, I understand, and people say this, but I genuinely think it's true, that everyone talks the way they do about the game and they give feedback in the way they do genuinely because they care, right? And we understand that. I understand why that is that way. And so it is very, very rare that I have ever had a situation where there is something I'm trying to get feedback on that players haven't already readily given us that feedback that I can go get. So I mean this sincerely when I say it every time, which is always keep feedback coming. Sure, saying things that you like are good, but so are saying things you don't like. Being constructive and being critical is extremely important. Yeah. We need to know as well what you don't like. I don't just want, if we lived in a world where everything that people said was just positive, I would be weirded out, and I would think that I'm in some bizarro world, because that's just not how things are, right? There's always things that can be improved, and we're always looking at feedback to try to find ways to make things better. So.
Right. So you want to encourage people to keep the feedback coming no matter the light of it, whether it's good, bad, in the middle. You want the feedback.
Yep. Yes, please. Use less four-letter words, and you probably will not get hit on the forums. Just do it without four-letter words, and you'll be fine. And like I said, I spend a lot of time on the forums, a lot of times on Reddit, a lot of times in social media, just getting as much feedback as we possibly can about everything. So keep
Reddit
it coming.
It's just so hostile, though.
But the thing is, like, once you realize the hostility is there from a place of passion and that people just care, it's pretty easy to read past it.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
As long as people are pretty clear about the why the feedback is there, I think it's good.
Yep. Okay. So once again, and this is the last time I'm going to ask you, but I do need it. I really need it, Eric. Valkorian's armor set, please,
yep.
In the game. Tomorrow? I think tomorrow's good.
It's coming tomorrow. It's a bonus package deal. You buy the Manaan Stronghold for 5 credits, and you also get the Valkorian's armor for free.
Oh my god, that's brilliant. I will be expecting that, Eric. Otherwise, I will be posting some very constructive criticism on the forum.
I appreciate that, Sam. Thank you.
Okay. So with all that being done and dusted, I guess, we're just going to go ahead and end the interview. Hopefully we cleared up a lot of stuff which satisfied you guys, the viewer, the audience. If not, please feel free to bash me, as I directed this interview and I'm probably terrible at it, but hey, you get what you get, and that's it. So thank you to everybody who watched, and especially thank you to you, Eric Musco, for taking the time to come and do this. I'm very, very grateful, especially for being in the Influence program and all of the codes I've received, all that kind of bunch of brilliant stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do all the content that you do, and appreciate it.
It was a pleasure, man.